So welcome everybody to this Zoom Sandbox, an opportunity for us to explore some skills and functionalities of the Zoom platform, and then have an opportunity to break out into smaller groups to practice those skills. Here is a list of some of the skills that we'll be covering today. There are so many different functionalities and skills within the Zoom platform that we can explore. Hassan and I, when designing these sandboxes, decided to trim that down significantly into the essential skills and functionalities we'll want to be comfortable with to begin our first Zoom sessions with students next week, be it advisory or classes. There will eventually perhaps be an appetite to learn more advanced skills for increased engagement and interactivity. But for the time being, our goal is to have a Zoom session with students, allow for some minimal functionality and engagement, and to just have it be a successful meeting. You may notice in the upper right-hand corner that there is this logo, and that logo indicates that the skill we talk about on that screen is something we're gonna do together as a group. So keep your eye out for that. The first thing I'd like to draw to your attention is on the bottom left-hand side of your screen. You will see a few options. One is an option to mute and unmute yourself. The other option is to start and stop your video from displaying your desktop camera. A little advanced for the future, but if you're like me, right now I have my headphones in my ears so that the computer is not making noise, it's going into my ears, but I'm just using the computer microphone. So if you're in a room with other people whom you don't want to disturb, that could be a great option. Okay, the next thing I want to draw to your attention is on the bottom of your screen, you should see some tools. We've got our unmute and mute button, our video, invite, participants, screen share, chat. Let's look at the reactions area for a moment. This is an opportunity for participants in the meeting to give non-verbal reactions so that there's some engagement and interactivity that does not demand that everyone speak. A nice way to do that quickly. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna stop. So in the upper right hand, right now I suspect that you are on full screen, but when I stop sharing, you will have the option to toggle back and forth between different views. The speaker view is one in which your screen will display whoever it is that is speaking currently. So that when someone is talking, you can look at them, you can see their facial features and their body language. The gallery view allows you to see everyone in the meeting at once. And so I am going to stop. I do want to make a note, we're not going to practice this right now, but if we are in speaker view, for instance, and you want to look at someone who's not necessarily speaking currently, you can, in the top of your screen where you may see the other meeting participants lined up, if you hover your mouse over the meeting participant, you may see these three dots come up, and that will allow you to pin a video. That means I would like to look at this person's camera, regardless of whether or not they are speaking. If you were hosting the video, so this is something the host can see, but participants cannot, that same three little dots gives you a greater range of options, including spotlighting a video. And if the host chooses to spotlight a video, what will happen is that meeting participant, their camera will be displayed for all to see. So perhaps if you want to have a student share their answers to a problem, and you'd like all other participants to see that student, you can do that there.
It is highly recommended that one of the first things people do is to turn on the participant and chat panels. You can toggle those on by clicking on the participants button at the bottom panel as well as the chat panel at the bottom. This gives you the best view of Zoom and allows participants to take advantage of the interactive features within a Zoom meeting.
In general, I find that full screen is a little bit tougher to navigate because your participant and chat windows kind of detach from the main Zoom screen, and it's harder to access and interact with them. So I generally don't use full screen, but even so, what's going to happen shortly is I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to invite you to practice entering full screen and exiting full screen which you can find in the upper right corner of your kind of main viewing window in Zoom. And when you finish that, I will invite you to again. What I invite folks to do momentarily is within the chat, you can, of course, write messages to one another. And there are some options here. Here you can see that this message would go to everyone. Anything that's typed here is publicly viewable to anybody in this meeting. You do have the option, if you click on this to area, you can choose to write to everybody. You can also select to privately chat with somebody else in this meeting. In general, I would suggest turning this feature off because I think it would be potentially distracting for students who might chat with one another on the side right in here. But I do want to invite folks to, again, all right, so in your participants window, which very well may be gone now that I am screen sharing, it may have kind of taken over your screen, but it will come back soon. There are a lot of other ways to communicate with the host and one another non-verbally. So you will see in the upper right-hand corner of your screen when I'm done screen sharing, a participant's view with the option for you to do something like raise your hand, say yes to perhaps a question that was asked, say no. You could say something like go slower, go faster. There's a more feature, and the more feature will give you options like thumbs up, thumbs down. I need to go grab a coffee. I need a little break, or sorry, I'm away. I'm not attentive right now. If, for instance, I am in a place where I, as the host, can't see that, maybe because I'm presenting like I am right now, if someone raises their hand, a little pop-up appears on my screen so I can see, oh, okay, someone raised their hand. And later on, as we all do things like say yes or say no, it's a great opportunity to see a quick tally. Another functionality within the chat is the ability to send files within it. You can drag and drop files from your computer, which I will do momentarily. You can also add files from Google Drive, or you can also browse through your computer. Perhaps a nice way to share a handout with students or just share any sort of materials with whoever your participants may be. So what I'm going to do momentarily is I'm just going to stop the share and I will send. This is not something that we are going to practice right now, but we will be able to do in our breakout rooms, is the ability to share your screen so that instead of seeing just the presenter's face, the presenter can display some items. And there are a number of options here, and I want to highlight some of the nuanced differences between them. So right, this is a great feature to allow you to present something to your meeting. There are a couple of options here, and there are some nuanced differences. So if you were to share your desktop, this means that anything on your computer screen is going to be shown to the students. So if you accidentally left your email open when you start sharing, maybe your email will be displayed. Or if you need to go and find a file to open, they will be watching along as you open that file. This is one option versus something like choosing a specific application. So for instance, I might have multiple applications open. I've got Microsoft Word, I've got Google Chrome, I've got Safari, I've got something else. If you choose a specific application, it will show only that application's window. It will not show anything else. So maybe like right now, I have my presenter notes off to the side, but that's not being shown. This would just show only that application. There is a whiteboard feature that we are not going to explore very much today, but I encourage you to in your breakout rooms. A really attractive feature that I think, especially for math teachers, is the opportunity to display your iPad or other device in order to write and have students watch you writing live. I'm just going to continue to the next slide now. When you are screen sharing, one thing to be aware of is that the tools that we are accustomed to seeing on the bottom of the screen, those tools end up moving to the top of the screen. So the mute, stop video, participants, whatnot, those move to the top of the screen. And one thing I want to make you aware of is the annotate feature. The annotate feature allows you to draw, write text, make some stamps, on your screen as you are annotating. So for instance, I'm going to do a brief annotation here. I can make a little circle. I can make a stamp to say good job. I can draw text as well and other things. So I wanted to make you aware of that functionality as well. Again, we're not going to play with that very much right now, but when we get to our breakout rooms, I will invite you to do just that, but not necessarily to participants within the meeting. For instance, as participants, you may see you just see participants. I have managing participants. There is also the recording feature. My understanding right now is that it is advised not to record advisory sessions, but it is highly recommended to record class meetings. And you can take those recordings, which Zoom will make available to you, and you can link them, for instance, on a PowerSchool learning page or elsewhere. There is also the opportunity to create breakout rooms, which is something that we are about to do momentarily. Okay, so what's going to happen momentarily is I am going to randomly assign us into different breakout rooms. Depending on the size of the group, I think breakout rooms of probably 3 people. And in those breakout rooms, I'm going to invite you to practice some of the skills that we've done here today, whether it's nonverbal feedback. I think a key skill that folks would be, it would be helpful to practice is screen sharing and perhaps annotations. One thing to consider is how can breakout rooms and other skills demonstrated so far be useful to you in your classes or your meetings, and an opportunity to reflect with one another within the breakout rooms about what questions you have or other functionalities you're keen on learning with regard to Zoom. During your breakout rooms, you can click on the Ask for Help button, and that will ping me, and it will say that this person or this breakout room has a question. I will be navigating between the breakout rooms to drop in and check in on people and perhaps answer questions as they come up. Okay. Just want to attend to a few more things, beginning with some host actions that you can take. Again, only in the host role, but not as a participant. One that hopefully won't come up too often, but especially if you find that one of your participants is unmuted and there might be some sort of feedback loop going on or some very distracting noise and you're not sure from where it's coming, this mute all feature would quickly mute everyone's microphone to make sure that you are the only person speaking and that you can clearly communicate with your class. When you click the mute all, you will have the option to, of course, allow participants to unmute themselves so they can begin speaking again. However, of course, if you uncheck this box, that means that your participants will be muted and they will not have the option to unmute themselves unless you go in and you unmute them yourself. Some other options that you can take on, mute participants on entry. That's what happened here. I think that's a good strategy to have because then someone might not enter and begin speaking and interrupt the class if it's begun. You can see allowing participants to unmute themselves. As the host, I really like this play enter exit chime. Whenever someone comes in the meeting or leaves the meeting, it gives a little ding. So I know that there's some activity happening in that regard. Allowing participants to rename themselves. As many of you or all of you saw today, I use the waiting room feature here. This means 2 things. One, if someone were to enter the meeting before I, the host, was there and I was unprepared, the meeting doesn't start yet. And even if I am in the meeting, if I'm still getting my materials ready, it keeps participants in the waiting room until I actively allow them into the meeting. So it's good just from a preparedness standpoint. It really starts when you are ready. It could also be used as a way to have one-on-one meetings with students while keeping others in the waiting room, maybe during like an advisory or something. So if you go over here, you can pick a particular participant and put them in the waiting room. So maybe, during advisory, you have a big group discussion, but then you're kind of looking to have some quick one-on-ones. This is something that you could do. Oh, Bo just joined. Ready? Here comes Bo. Hey, Bo. So I just welcomed Bo in from the waiting room. And again, that is a great functionality in this case. Some other functionalities that the host has to address specific participants, like making a host or a co-host, renaming, putting them in the waiting room, or removing them from the meeting. Again, hosts can record sessions. It is advisable not to record your advisory sessions, but it is highly recommended that you record all of your class meetings and then perhaps later post those recordings onto a place like PowerSchool Learning. Okay, a couple of different ways to schedule meetings for advisory classes, what have you. Everyone has their own preference with how to do this, and so I'm going to present, I think, 3 different strategies, and I welcome you to use the one that appeals to you the most. The first is scheduling a meeting from within the Zoom app. So you just open Zoom on your computer, and this is your kind of welcome screen. You can schedule a meeting this way. You can give it a topic, date, and when it begins, when it ends. There is an option to make a meeting recurring. And considering the weekly nature of our schedule moving forward, this might be a very appealing option, so that you can have, for your 7th grade history section 1, you can have 1 recurring meeting and 1 link that will always go to that same meeting. So something to consider there. I do not generally attend to this. I think generating a meeting ID automatically is fine. I generally do not require a password. I tend to have both video and participant, both host and participant videos on to begin. That means when they begin the meeting, it will be set to on. And then some advanced options. I am a fan of the waiting room. I am also a fan of muting participants upon entry, so there isn't a cacophony of sound when participants enter. And then, of course, to be aware of the recording and when to record, or if you choose not to, just to be aware of this. I strongly recommend that you do not enable join before host. That would enable, for instance, students to enter a meeting with multiple students without the teacher if the teacher is running late or for whatever reason. Okay, second way to do it is not from the Zoom app, but the Zoom website, from zoom.us. Within the website, click on meetings, schedule a new meeting, very similar stuff, topic, when does it begin, how long does it go? I'm on the West Coast, so I've got my Pacific time here. Once you have created this meeting, you can share this meeting and invite others in a number of ways. One is to click on Google Calendar. It will automatically create a Google Calendar invite, and then you can invite others by email address. You could also take the URL to your meeting, and you could distribute that however you best see fit. Maybe you email your whole class. Maybe you post it to PowerSchool Learning, whatever you see as best for your practices. The third way is to schedule a meeting directly from Google Calendar. If you are creating a new event, this is the window you will see. You create your event title, perhaps it's your class name, and here is the key area right here. Adding rooms, location, or conferencing. Clicking on that will allow you the option to create an associated Zoom meeting right off the bat. Just a note that the very first time you do this, you will be guided through a few windows where you have to give Zoom access to your calendar and you say, yes, I give you permission, after which each successive time will be more quick. Okay. So for instance, if Hassan had his biotech class on Thursdays, it would meet on March 26th, and you can, for instance, set it to meet weekly. You can also add your guests. Yes, you might have to add the guests, in this case, perhaps students one by one through email. Maybe you've created a Google group to do it more quickly. But one benefit is that by having this recurring meeting, you don't need to invite them again and again and again. It will show up on their Google calendars with the same link, and you can use that to have the class meet on a weekly basis. And the joining instructions, I believe, will automatically populate into the Google Calendar invite. You can also click on this so that you can copy paste these again to PowerSchool, maybe an email, what have you. The most important piece of information is that Zoom meeting URL to distribute to your participants. Okay, a few features that you may want to consider enabling or disabling. This has to be done on the Zoom website. And this right here, this is setting your defaults. So that if you create a new meeting, these are what the default settings are going to be. You can change many, if not all of them, from within the meeting when it started, but good to have your defaults intentionally set. And there are some suggestions that I have for what are good default settings, including annotation, whiteboard. One thing that I mentioned before is I would strongly recommend disallowing private chats. I find that private chats might present a distraction in which students may chat with one another on the side during your meeting. This is also an area where you can find things like breakout rooms and to enable them. I recommend that you take a moment to visit these settings and take a look, and you can choose for yourself what you think is going to best support learning in your classes. Also within the Zoom tutorials, there is a link to some suggested settings. Okay, we've got about 10 minutes left in the hour. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to suggest some action steps moving forward. We will then have some time to do some questions and answers in case there are some questions we can attend to at this moment. And then for those who are interested, perhaps if people want to continue exploring right now, we can create opportunities for them. So what I'm going to do is suggest that moving forward, we all here today have had the opportunity to explore and test out some functionalities in Zoom, but from a participant's perspective. And the participant's perspective and host perspective is similar in many ways, but there are some differences. So what I invite you to do is find a small group of people to practice setting up, inviting, and starting Zoom sessions so that everyone can practice being the host and seeing what that looks like. As I mentioned before, the middle school and upper school PowerSchool sites have some great tutorials on Zoom and other resources that are going to be really helpful as we move to an online platform. If you have any feedback for this particular sandbox or the one from earlier today and want to ask some more questions, there is a Google form which Hassan may put into the chat, if that's okay. He's giving me a smile. Thank you, Hassan. And in general, whether it is a tech question or an online learning question, Hassan and I, amongst other folks on the support team, do have access to help desk now. So if you submit a help desk ticket, we will get pinged as well. And if it's something that someone like Hassan or myself or Aaron or Remy or Adam can help with, we will respond to you on help desk and then maybe via email to help however we can. So I recommend that you use help desk for any questions you may have.